I remember one time I was not having a good attitude. I don't remember what I was upset about, but I was just not responding the way I should have. And I think I was doing the dishes and just getting work done, and then I walked into my room, and Priscilla had made my bed, and I think left a little note on it, or an I love you plaque or something. And I remember just stopping and just crying and being like, here I was not being kind to my sister, and she went and invested and showed love even when I didn't deserve it.
Hey friends, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It's Friday, June 30th, 2023. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Yesterday we talked about Anna Duggar and how she has been reportedly kicked out of the Duggars house, out of the property, and has been forced to flee with her 7 kids. Now, this is according to a report by The Sun. In the comments yesterday, a lot of you were not convinced this was true, and I don't know, because at this point, the Duggars haven't said anything, and Anna hasn't said anything, and as of today, Anna's mailing address, according to online, is still listed as the Duggars. It seems as though she may be in limbo at this point. But once the news hit, right, that Anna had been kicked out, James Duggar showed up onto his Instagram to make a post and a story which speaks about frustration, which tells me that there could be some truth to what's being said, because it's all about how you need to control your frustration and your feelings. And I was like, okay, maybe this is true, because it seems like right now Jim Bob is using James's Instagram to get his story out. He had been using Jed and Katie, he's used Jessa in the past, and right now it seems like his son James is who is being the person to put out his propaganda. And this is sort of a nod, seems to be a nod that there is some truth to what's going on with Anna. I also want to talk about some details about the funeral of Jim Bob's uncle that passed away last week, and how Ben and Jim Bob were not invited to the funeral, and what a loved one of Tommy Lester told me earlier this week about the situation. And then finally, David Waller was called out for basically being the person that helped Gothard do things to some of the young women that have claimed that Gothard essayed them. So Waller's getting called out. And on top of that, David Waller's sermon that had Michael Keller in it, making those bonkers and redonkulous claims about slavery, has officially gone viral. D.L. Hughley is been sharing this. It has been on the Daily Beast. It's literally everywhere at this point. Millions of people know about this, and it's been scrubbed from Fair Park Baptist Church's YouTube channel. So let's dive into today's topic. Before we do, can you please do me a big favor and give this video a thumbs up? Also, please subscribe to my channel if you have not yet subscribed by clicking on the subscribe button down below. Make sure to click on the bell if you want to get notified of any time I go live and new content loads. And you can make sure to leave a comment if you have something to say, and share this video with your friends. Let's discuss what's going on with the Anna situation first. So yesterday we talked on my channel about what I thought was going on, and how I had shared with you some of the inside details I had been told by numerous people about Anna Duggar. I told you yesterday that it doesn't surprise me, or it wouldn't surprise me, if Anna and Jim Bob eventually did come to a head. Why? Because both of them have fiery tempers. Anna played a very docile and sweet and meek girl on the show, but that's not who Anna is. I have spoken to so many, particularly young women that are a little bit younger than Anna, that gave me a lot more insight into what Anna's personality was like, and that was that it's not the most kind. She's actually alluded to this, and I showed you in that clip that she wasn't always the nicest to her siblings, and she had bad attitudes. That's kind of how she said it. But from what I was told, she has a temper, and she's not afraid to yell and scream if she needs to, which is not normal in this culture. Women don't yell a lot. So her personality is very abrasive, which is in the real world not a bad thing. You know, like women having an opinion and speaking their mind in this world isn't bad. In her world, it's terrible. She bristles with a lot of people. And then Anna's just staunch defense of Josh and her paranoia about his infidelity and how he always had a wandering eye created just havoc for a lot of the girls that were in the lives of the Duggars' daughters, where she would constantly make it seem like Josh was trying to hit on them, and she would treat some of these girls terribly even though they weren't doing anything. That's what multiple young women has told me. So this idea that she would blow up and have a fight with them doesn't surprise me. So what did James Duggar post on his Instagram? James' post says this: all frustrations come from within, but with the Lord by your side, we hold the power to accept or decline the invitation to be upset when the outside world provokes us. Let his presence guide us in choosing peace over frustration. My guess is that the outside world provoking us, and he says to accept or decline the expectation to be upset. The Duggars are facing a lot of backlash, so obviously this can be a veiled comment to the public about how, you know, we're not going to respond negatively and we're not going to be frustrated, right? But also the news breaks yesterday about Anna getting kicked out. This is posted by James this morning, speaking directly about frustrations and having sort of like a reactionary attitude. My guess is that outside voices, outside influences, and maybe even information about coming out from this docuseries, details maybe that Anna wasn't aware of. I could imagine a fight brewing between the two of them. Anna and Jim Bob don't get along. She's never been close with them, really. On the show, they made it seem like she was, but she didn't really mesh in with them very well because of her. Like I said, she was an opinionated woman, which is not a bad thing, but in that world, it's like the kiss of death. This idea that you have to like not react to what happens when people provoke us. Like in theory, yeah, that's a great idea, James. But this whole idea that you can't have emotions and you can't have feelings and you can't actually feel frustrated, because at the root of things, being frustrated isn't actually a bad thing. There's a lot of things that can frustrate us. We don't have to stay frustrated, but we can still feel frustrated. There's not bad things about feeling feelings, right? This to me tells me that they are choosing peace in their home over the frustration of having to deal with Anna. That's just what I got out of it. Now, it might not be the case, but again, Jim Bob does this all the time. News breaks, a leak happens, and then something will get posted to somehow confirm it. He uses propaganda all the time. I feel like at this point I should have a PhD in Duggar propaganda using internet shade online. So that's just my opinion there. So I do think there might be some truth to Anna getting kicked out. I don't know what this means for Anna and Josh. She's still loyal to him, but the distance could certainly open her up to influences outside of Josh, which could potentially make her maybe leave him. Outside of Jim Bob's control, she for sure could be awakened to a life outside the possibility of being with Josh. So there is that. So let's talk about the next thing I wanted to talk about, which was the next thing I want to talk about is the Duggars not being invited to the funeral of Tommy Lester. So if you remember, the police were at the Duggars last Sunday morning because Tommy Lester, who was Mary's brother, passed away suddenly Sunday morning. And one of his, let's just say one of the in-laws, reached out to me to let me know what was going on. So an obituary was posted on like Monday or Tuesday, very quickly after everything happened. And it said that Ben Seawald was going to be officiating. And apparently, obviously, I reported that I thought this was a really, really weird thing. And because he's a homophobe and he's not a very nice to people that are gay. And he's got a lot of stuff on his website. He has an entire belief statement about sexuality and marriage. He makes people sign things to be on his staff and volunteer to say that they won't be gay and be in gay relationships if they're part of the church. It's very intense, and he's made videos about it. He's anti-LGBTQ+. That's the only way I can put it. And so what happened was the family member reached out to me and said they had no clue how Ben was added to this funeral. Their only guess was that Jim Bob had gotten involved and somehow decided that Ben was going to speak at this event. And once they realized who Ben was, they declined and they removed him from the service. They did not want anything of the service to be anything related to the Duggars. So basically what they told me is that Tommy had been completely separated from the Duggars for years. He had separated himself from the family. Now, Amy said he separated himself from the family. What this loved one told me was that Tommy, when he came out to the family, had expressed to his loved ones that the Duggars were not kind to him, nor was Mary, and they weren't accepting of who he was. And so he moved on with his life because they could not accept that he was a gay man and that he wanted to be, living his authentic life, and he didn't want to pretend anymore. And when he made that choice, he separated himself from the way the family was treating him. Now, not everyone in the family mistreated him. It was specifically he cut ties with certain siblings like Mary and Jim Bob and Mary's kids because of the way that he was treated. That's what they told me, allegedly. And on top of that, they also said that Tommy's estrangement with Jim Bob was made worse when Mary passed away because her estate was completely mishandled, and she had properties that she had inherited and stuff from her parents. And that property and the estate, basically all of her siblings were cut out. So she had all these holdings and all of these things that were supposed to go to siblings on top of Jim Bob, and Jim Bob basically took everything. And Tommy was 100% disabled, and so any inheritance that he was supposed to get from Mary, Jim Bob just made sure he didn't get it, and he took everything. And he gave a couple things to Deanna, and that was it. Everyone else was iced out, according to the family member. So Jim Bob's mishandling and the greediness around Mary's estate also was a contributing factor for the uneasiness. As far as why Lawrence had police go to Jim Bob's house, it was courtesy. That's what they told me. They literally said to me, Lawrence didn't want to call Jim Bob because they had no relationship with him. The entire time Lawrence and Tommy had been together, he wasn't around the Duggars, and the family didn't feel safe in interacting with the Duggars given their feelings about Tommy and his husband. So he asked the police to contact Jim as a next of kin of Mary. That was it. That was all. It had nothing to do about him being in charge of his inheritance or anything like that. It was like a courtesy that he asked police to contact the Duggars, and then he actually contacted others in the family himself. So he didn't want to speak to the Duggars. So when everything was figured out about the funeral, they spent all day Wednesday getting Ben removed. They found a replacement to do the speaking at the graveside memorial, and Jim Bob was not invited. They made it pretty clear, according to the family member that I spoke to, that they did not want any of the Duggars at the funeral. They didn't want any hate at his funeral. They wanted to keep this to close friends and family that loved and supported Tommy, and that was it. And so the son snapped some photos, and they saw that there was no one there from the Duggars, that Ben had been removed, and the family was able to grieve and have a simple ceremony. He got a 21 gun salute, and Lawrence and his kids were there to say goodbye to Tommy. Jim Bob and Ben were kicked out and not invited. And people will say that they snubbed them. They didn't want them there. I'm just going to be very clear. The family did not want Jim Bob or Ben there at all. So the next thing was David Waller is getting called out. So David Waller was the assistant of Bill Gothard for a long, long time. And here's what happened. In Shiny Happy People, Duggar Family Secrets, one of the women that sued Gothard, Emily Elizabeth Anderson, who also has a Facebook page and a Instagram called Thriving Forward, and it's about, being a cult survivor. She shared on the series about what Bill Gothard had done to her, and she was a member of the lawsuit that sued him. On Shiny Happy People, she mentioned that Bill had taken her back into his office late at night and was stunned to find one of his workers in his office, and he was shocked and surprised that he was there. And so this worker being in the office late that evening prevented Gothard from doing worse things to Emily than she had already experienced. I suspected that was David, but I didn't know, and she confirmed it was David today on her social media. So she said, since the release of the documentary, a few people have asked me who the male assistant was who watched Gothard groom me late at night in his office. So I'd like to go ahead and just go on record with the individual's identity. The man is David Waller. David and his now wife Priscilla, yes, Anna Duggar's sister, were both working at IBLP headquarters when I was there in 2011. They began their courtship just a few weeks after I left, and soon after Gothard left his position as president of the IBLP, David was brought on as the director of the Advanced Training Institute. Over the span of 2 weeks, David watched closely as Gothard sexually groomed me, which included being present for late-night sessions and inappropriate questioning as to my sexual and romantic relationship history. As Gothard persuaded me to come up to headquarters, and then he assisted Gothard in crafting manipulative ways to coerce me into staying at headquarters, against me and my mother's wishes. David and his wife Priscilla have since left ATI, and David now serves as lead pastor of Fair Park Baptist Church in Texas. If you are wondering if Waller has since changed in the last decade and now chooses to hold abusers accountable, I can personally say I believe he has not. Just last year, he penned a letter to the judge who was sentencing Josh Duggar for possession of CSAM, and he asked the judge for leniency. He wrote, as a pastor who cares about the spiritual condition of people, I urge you to consider how much his wife and 7 children need them in their lives, to be brought back home to provide not just financial but spiritual guidance in the family. David has never personally reached out to me to apologize or take ownership of his enabling of Gothard's abuse during my stay at headquarters. And that was what she wrote. So David definitely was a part of a cog in the wheel, and he was there, she claims, late at night to help when he was having these really inappropriate Q&As with Emily and other women, I'm assuming. And so he's getting called out, and she's saying he hasn't changed. I think anyone that follows this channel should know that David, of course, hasn't changed. He is a massive supporter of Josh Duggar. He is a massive Duggar hugger. He loves the Duggars so much. I know that he goes and visits. He had been going to visit Josh at the prison. Priscilla would go to visit Josh at the prison. So they for sure haven't changed. And I think that's true and evidenced by the sermon that Michael Keller ingraciously and horrifically gave last week at his church, which was filled with misogynistic rhetoric about women who have gone through infidelity with their husbands cheating on them and having to take them back and letting them out of probation, which basically is saying you need to let them still have sex with you or he's going to keep doing it. Let him out of that probation where you're not giving it up anymore, and start giving it up, honey. And then his horrific words about slavery. So that clip of him has gone everywhere. And I actually downloaded the full sermon because I had a feeling it would get deleted, because that's what these people do. They get called out by something and it goes everywhere. And they delete, and they just pretend it never happened. The church has made no comment about it. They're not responding to any criticism. They're not even addressing that Michael made these statements at their church. This has been on literally so many outlets, just to give you a sense of like how many outlets have covered this. The Daily Beast covered it with a title of Anna Duggar's dad gives truly bonkers and racist sermon about slavery. Ross Story also posted and said that Anna Duggar's dad praises slave owners for building churches for slaves to pray for their freedom. Sportskeeda did an article and says, makes me feel nauseous. Anna Duggar's dad, Mike Keller, leaves netizens outraged after a video of racist sermon goes viral. Protestia, another outlet, says Anna Duggar's dad preaches insanely stupid sermon about slavery. Hollywood Gossip, Anna Duggar's father delivers shockingly racist sermon amid latest round of family scandals. And it's literally been shared all over TikTok. It's been shared all over Twitter. And D.L. Hughley posted it. I'm seeing massive amounts of platforms sharing this. And it's not just people that are talking about God and cults like me. It's like mainstream influencers and large Instagram pages that cover pop culture. It's pretty wide at this point. So they've deleted that and they're trying to ignore that it ever happened, but the internet is forever and I still have a full copy, so y'all will never forget what Michael Keller said. Okay, so David dirty deletes, David gets called out, Anna Duggar's homeless, and the Duggars were banned from a funeral. Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Bye, guys.